INFJs, be kind but don't be blind. They tell you to be kind, to stay gentle in a world that sharpens itself against innocence. But kindness without vision is the knife that turns inward. You've learned that mercy can blind, and compassion, if unguarded, can destroy. You are kind, yes, but never again blind. The heart that sees too much. You were never designed to be half aware. From the moment you began reading people instead of faces, energies instead of words, you carried a vision that few could bear. You sensed the pain beneath the smiles, the truth behind excuses, the exhaustion in the laughter. And because you saw it all, you offered kindness, not as a performance, but as a survival instinct. You helped people not because you wanted to be praised, but because you could not stand to watch suffering unfold while you remained still. But the danger was never in your empathy. The danger was in believing that everyone would meet your empathy with equal sincerity. You poured yourself into the broken, into the liars disguised as victims, into the manipulators who used your healing nature as their playground. You mistook attention for affection and need for respect. Every INFJ learns this pain, the realization that kindness in the wrong hands becomes currency. You became their quiet sanctuary, while they built their chaos with your calm. Yet when you woke up to the truth, you didn't grow bitter, you grew precise. Your kindness turned selective, your warmth earned. You learned that protecting your light doesn't make you cruel, it makes you conscious. 2. The invisible manipulators. You've always felt the subtle power games others play. The guilt traps, the emotional debts, the unspoken expectations that ask you to shrink. Most people never notice these patterns, but you feel them like static in the air. You hear the tone change, the micro-hesitation, the energy shift when someone's intentions start to rot. Still, your first instinct is mercy. You rationalize their behavior. You tell yourself, they must be hurting. But here's the truth. Pain doesn't excuse exploitation. You've spent years confusing understanding with permission. You let too many people rewrite your boundaries in the name of compassion. Yet something inside you began to snap, not in rage, but in awakening. You started to recognize manipulation for what it was, a silent theft of your inner peace. You realized that forgiveness doesn't mean accessibility, that empathy can exist beside distance, that love without discernment isn't divine, it's dangerous. When you stopped feeding emotional parasites, they called you cold. When you stopped rescuing those who refused to rise, they called you selfish. But their accusations were only proof that your transformation worked. You stopped being their endless resource. You became your own guardian. 3. The mask of goodness. Your kindness was never weakness, it was armor, carefully forged in silence. You knew that people equate softness with submission, and you allowed them to underestimate you because it gave you clarity. When they revealed themselves, you remembered every word, every contradiction, every moment of false innocence. You saw that many wear goodness like a costume. They smile while calculating. They offer sympathy while collecting information. You learned that good intentions are often the disguise of control. Being an INFJ means you read these layers instinctively. You can sense when someone's help is really an audition for moral superiority. You can tell when apologies are negotiations, when affection is currency, when humility is marketing. Your kindness evolved into something dangerous for the deceitful. It became truth itself. You stopped mirroring politeness and started reflecting authenticity. People who once adored your warmth began to fear your calm stare, because it said, "I see through you." And that, more than confrontation, dismantled them. You didn't have to raise your voice. You only had to raise your awareness. 4. The silent revolution. Every INFJ eventually reaches a breaking point, not an explosion, but a quiet revolution. The moment you decide that kindness without boundaries is self-betrayal. You become unrecognizable to those who once used you. You no longer rush to explain yourself. You no longer soften your no. You no longer apologize for peace that comes from distance. You've realized that protecting your energy is not cruelty, it's maturity. This new form of kindness is colder. Yes, but it's purer. It's no longer about being liked. It's about being aligned. You still help people, but you discern who's asking for healing and who's asking for a host. You still forgive, but you no longer reopen doors that lead to the same pain. People say you've changed, but what they really mean is you've stopped allowing blindness to masquerade as love. Your empathy has evolved from reaction to precision. You've become the kind that terrifies the manipulative, the kind that sees, that measures, that never forgets. You are kind, you are powerful, you are awake. 5. The cost of compassion. You used to believe that love could fix anything, that empathy could rewrite someone's story if you just gave enough of yourself. But the longer you lived as an INFJ, the more you understood that compassion, without boundaries, becomes corrosion. Every time you forgave what was not remorseful, a small piece of you eroded. Every time you stayed silent to keep the peace, your soul grew heavier. You learned that saving others from themselves is not kindness, it is interference. You cannot rescue someone determined to remain asleep. The cost of your compassion was clarity. You saw that some people need to lose you to face themselves, that your withdrawal is not punishment, it is truth forcing evolution. You realize that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is walk away and let consequences become the teacher you never could be. True kindness is not the sacrifice of self, it's the refusal to enable self-destruction. 6. The strength of stillness. There was a time when your kindness looked like action, checking in, helping, fixing, and explaining. But as you matured, you discovered the deeper strength of stillness. Silence became your protest, absence became your mirror. When the world demanded performance, you offered composure. When others shouted, you observed. When manipulation tried to bait you, you responded with nothing. This restraint is not weakness. It is wisdom sharpened by pain. You no longer give energy to every cry for attention, because you know that not every cry comes from sincerity. You learn that stillness terrifies those who depend on chaos. The moment you stopped reacting, they lost control. Your peace became a weapon, the kind that disarms without wounding. You realize that kindness doesn't always look like softness. Sometimes it's the calm refusal to engage. Sometimes it's the quiet exit that leaves echoes behind. 7. The power of discernment. Discernment became your new empathy. You stopped asking, "How can I help?" and started asking, "Should I help?" You recognized that not every situation deserves your emotional labor. You began to read intent before words, vibration before apology, and pattern before promise. Your intuition, once dismissed as overthinking, became your compass. You understood that energy never lies, it only repeats. Discernment is what separates the blind kind from the wise kind. The blind kind gives endlessly and bleeds quietly. The wise kind observes first, measures, and then chooses. You chose wisdom. Now, when someone approaches with charm, you notice the undertone. When someone plays the victim, you sense the performance. You are kind, but you are no longer accessible. Your kindness is earned, not assumed. Your time is sacred, not public property. And because of this, people either evolve to meet you, or they vanish trying to manipulate what they can no longer control. 8. The rebirth of the INFJ. You have transformed. You've buried the version of yourself who believed that goodness meant blindness. You've replaced it with precision, measured, intentional, unwavering. Now, your kindness is not reactive but strategic. It's the quiet confidence that comes from seeing through illusions and choosing integrity over approval. You no longer bend to keep connections alive. You let truth decide who stays. The rebirth of the INFJ is not loud. It's subtle, steady, almost regal. You walk through life with empathy still glowing in your chest, but now it is protected by discernment. Your love is rarer, but it is purer. Your mercy is slower, but it is real. When people call you distant, remember, they once called you blind. When they say you've changed, remember, they benefited from the old you. And when you feel guilty for choosing yourself, remember this truth: kindness is holy, but blindness is not. You were never meant to serve everyone. You were meant to see everyone and decide who deserves your service. Be kind, but never blind. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, if you've learned the hard way that kindness without vision leads to exhaustion, then this channel is where your clarity begins. Stay kind, stay awake, stay free.